Hello and welcome back to the True Crime Comedy Podcast, Murderess Podcast. I am your host, Sidney Smith. Thank you so much for joining me today. On this podcast, we take a look into the real-life murders committed by women. Now, that last sentence I only added in there for people who may just be catching on. And there should be some of you who are just catching on because one of my loyal accomplices should have already clued you in, and that's how you found me. So, just want to let you know what we do here. If you are someone who's been listening for a while, I would appreciate if you would just also share. Just go in there. Where you at? Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart. Just grab a link. Send it off to a couple friends that enjoy true crime podcasts and have them come on over and listen to my silky smooth pipes. For those of you who did not hear the news last week, you can also catch the podcast on YouTube now too by going to my YouTube channel, Sidney Smith Creative. Sidney Smith Creative is going to be spelled CRE, the number 8, TIV. So you can catch me and my voice, my face and my voice, if you want to check that out. And we have that up from last week. We just started. Now this week, due to scheduling conflicts, we will be doing just the audio version of the podcast this week. But we'll be back in the studio recording video and audio. So looking forward to doing that again. Had such a great time doing it. I hope those of you who took some time to at least peep in on it enjoyed it as well. I know a lot of you are going to enjoy, as you have been, the podcasting side of the audio side of it. More so, because it's a little easier for you, especially if you're at work or you're with the kids or you're working out. You know, you may be on a jog, maybe you're on the bike. It's a lot easier, I know, for some of you. But it was super important for me to kind of take the podcast straight from here into a studio as well, so we can get it up on YouTube. And that's something we're going to try to do more often than not, as long as the scheduling can come together to get that done. So had a great time doing it. I think I'm going to get better at it. I mentioned this last week. While I am used to being in front of the camera from time to time, you're usually told not to look at the camera. So being told that you should look at the camera, you know, it's just a different way of doing it, obviously. It's a better way of doing it that way, given the art form that it is. But just something to get used to. So looking forward to doing that, adding a little something else into the old tool bag there, presenting these stories in a different way to hopefully reach more people. So if you guys would either way support the show, I would appreciate it. Whether you're listening to it here and go ahead and drop 5 stars like you can on Apple Podcasts, or giving us a like, or whatever it is that iHeart and Spotify is letting you do now. It seems like they're always changing shit. I can never keep up with what I'm asking you guys to do. But if you are someone who listens to podcasts on them, hopefully you kind of already know, and you've already done it or are going to do it. I hope. You'll also see, and I think I mentioned this last week as well, you'll see me trying out some new co-host, see who can kind of vibe with me and with you guys as well, and with the stories. And hopefully that'll be happening. Well, that will be happening. We'll be starting that next week. So it's not I hope, but I know we will. And I've got a few people lined up that we will be testing out. And hopefully you guys dig them as much as you dig the stories. So this past weekend, I took a quick trip with the wife to Las Vegas. Had a great time. Stayed at the MGM for the first time. So that was a good time. Normally we stay, I don't know, for you folks who do go to Vegas, you will be more familiar, obviously, than those who don't. But normally we stay down Caesars, Julius Caesars, Harrah's, Flamingo, that area there, because there's so much going on. And if I had my way, I would probably stay at, it's tough because they all bring something so different. Like I love the Cosmo, but I feel like the Cosmo doesn't offer me quite as much of things that I would do to keep me in that building while the rooms are beautiful. But then if I have to leave, I'm too far away from so many different things. Caesars, the rooms are beautiful, but it's so crowded all the time. With everyone from gamblers to bachelorette parties to prostitutes, whatever you name it, it's at Caesars. But I enjoy it because it has one of my favorite cigar bars there, Monte Cristo. So enjoy that as well. But we stayed down at the MGM this time and really, really did enjoy that. Had a beautiful room, a view of the Strip, which I really enjoyed. And they had these great, and oh my God, I've been telling everyone about this. These great curtains, not curtains, I'm sorry, shades. These great shades, like these blackout shades. And it was awesome because if you're from the Midwest or back east anywhere, when you come out west, you don't see I keep saying curtains. You don't see shades as much as you do back east. So it was great to see these things. And when I say they blacked out everything from the sun to the lights on the strip, oh, it was magnificent, magnificent. But we had a great time there. Warren B. Hall, if you listen to my other podcast, Warren B. Hall, one of my comedy brothers and my co-host on Now That's Debatable, he had a birthday. And so we went out. His wife put together a great idea of a party for him. And he had a lot of people he grew up with who were there, which is always amazing. You can always really sense the value of a person based off of, and it sounds weird to say, but when you have people that you've known for years and they'll take time out and their money out to travel cross country or wherever they have to travel to come and visit you and enjoy you and celebrate you and your day, that's a real vibe. But I guess you could say the same thing when someone passes, because when you go to a funeral, you really get an idea of how that person touched those around him or her. So it was a great time. He's also a comedian, as I think I mentioned. So he's featuring all week at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club. And Brad Garrett, for those of you who do not know this either, he's the brother of Raymond on Everybody Loves Raymond. So he's a very tall gentleman. He has his own comedy club, beautiful room in Las Vegas in the MGM. So great time, great club. Really enjoyed it. The party was amazing. It was great to see so many people come out again to celebrate Warren. One of my favorite things to do, and got a lot of time to do it, was to just hang out by the pool and have some adult beverages and have some conversations. And I did that every day that I was there. Like I got off the plane, went to the hotel. The only thing that kept me from getting all my pool time in on the very first day, Saturday, when we got in, was I was waiting for Warren to come in because I wanted to say hello to him, because we were there for we were there for him, and it would be rude otherwise. But got all my pool time in. I really, really enjoyed it. Got a lot of gym time in with Warren. Got some good conversations in. So it was great. It was great for those comedy fans out there. Brian Regan was at the show. First time I ever got a chance to meet him. Very gracious man. And he stayed for the party after Warren finished performing that first night on Monday night. He stayed and he hung out, and he got up and said some nice words about Warren, which was a surprise to all of us, only because he never met Warren before. So, a lot of people, I've been in this business a long time. A lot of people may have would have stayed for a drink, but would have got out of there. He stayed the whole time and even went the extra step and said some nice things about a person he had just met and watched perform for the first time. And Warren, Warren had a good set, by the way. He was on stage with some other great comics, Gary Cannon and Quinn Dale. So it was a good time. Definitely enjoyed it. I had to get back because, hey, I had to be back here with you guys, and we got work to do and shows coming up and all kind of good stuff. So speaking of that, I'm with Sugar Sammy at CB Live this Saturday and Sunday. So if you're in the Valley, come on out to CB Live. I'll be out there with Sugar Sammy, featuring for him. And you can find those tickets on SidneySmithCreative.com. So go ahead and snatch some of those up for yourself, or you can just go straight to the CB Live website and you can grab them there as well. If you do end up stopping by any of these shows, make sure you swing by. Give me a big hug or a hello or a handshake or whatever you're comfortable with. I would love to know that you're listening and that you actually came by the show. That would mean a lot to me. June 29th, I'm at CB Live again. This is my show that I'm producing, a new game show called the National Spelling Buzz. Looking forward to episode 2 of that. And that'll be hitting YouTube here as well. So that's the episodes 1 going through its editing phase, and we'll get episode 2 into the can and get that edited as well. But if you want to come out and be part of the live taping, that will be amazing. It's a great opportunity for audience members to win some cash without even getting on stage. You don't even have to get on stage. Just 8 comics, 2 teams each show are going to be performing and competing. This is not anything that you have to worry about. Oddly enough, when you say spelling bee, I don't know what spelling bee people have been to, but they always get worried that you're going to be picked and called out of the audience. I don't think that's how spelling bees work. In fact, I know it's not. I've been in a ton of them growing up as a kid, and I've watched a ton of them. Not quite how it works. It's not the, Price is Right. where we come on down, Susie, Bob, Mary, come on down. It's not that at all, but come on out and check that out. And then before I go on another mini vacation, which is my usual and only vacation of the year, which we take off for the 4th of July weekend, was always a blast. But going to switch it up this year because July 1st, I will be downtown at Stand Up Live with the very, very hilarious Josh Wolf. He's coming into town with a brand new show that he's been working on, and I'm looking forward to working on that. He hit me up and asked me what I had going. Josh is one of my favorite guys out there, so I had to make a little change in my plans to make sure that I could be a part of that. So you will be able to go to my website again, SydneySmithCreative.com, and get tickets for all of those shows. Would love to see you guys out for those. All right. Let's get into the story. This week's Murderess is going to be Marie Delphine LaLaurie. Before I jump right into it, she kind of jumped out at me. I was doing some searching here for who did I want to talk about this week? And I think she's just in the back of my mind because I did not know a ton about her. I knew the stuff that one of my favorite shows was America Horror Story. And on that show, they talk about it. They talk about her, but even then, I did not have a lot of information on her. And it's a TV show, so I don't think they require themselves to give a whole lot of information, either up-to-date information, like they're teaching history or anything. But when I came across her while I was looking to see who we would discuss this week, I said, you know what, why not? I did a little bit, and it's not as long. And if you've listened, I like to go a little longer. I think I've mentioned this before. I like to get a little deeper into what's going on. But it was a story that I thought I wanted to do nonetheless. So this week's Murderess is Marie Delphine LaLaurie, or as commonly known, Madame LaLaurie. She was a Louisiana-born socialite and serial killer known for her involvement in the torture and murder of black slaves. Born in New Orleans, LaLaurie married 3 times over the course of her life. She maintained a prominent position in the social circles of New Orleans until April 10th, 1884, when rescuers responded to a fire at her Royal Street mansion discovered bound slaves within the house who showed evidence of torture over a long period. LaLaurie's house was subsequently sacked by an outraged mob of New Orleans citizens, and it is thought that she fled to Paris, where she died due to a boar attack during a hunting accident. See, that was something new. They didn't talk about boar attacks. Delphine McCarty was born around 1775, one of 5 children. Her father was Barthélemy Louis McCarty, whose father, Barthélemy McCarty, brought the family to New Orleans from the island around 1730. So she's an Irish girl. Her mother was Marie Jean Lovable, also known as the Widow Lecomte, whose marriage to Barthélemy Louis McCarty was her second. Both were prominent members of the New Orleans white Creole community. Delphine's cousin, Augustine, was mayor of New Orleans from 1815 to 1820. On July 11, 1800, Delphine McCarty married Don Ramon de Lopez, a high-ranking Spanish officer at the St. Louis Cathedral in New Orleans. By 1804, Don Ramon had risen to the position of consul general for Spain and Louisiana. Also, Delphine and Don Ramon traveled to Spain. Accounts of the trip differ. Grace King wrote in 1921 that the trip was Don Ramon's military punishment and that Delphine met the queen, who was impressed by Delphine's beauty. Stanley Arthur's 1936 report differed. He stated that on March 26, 1804, Don Ramon was recalled to this court of Spain to take his place at court as befitting his new position, but that Ramon never arrived in Spain because he died in Havana en route to Madrid. During the voyage, Delphine gave birth to a daughter named Marie Borgia Delphine Lopez Angala de la Candelaria, nicknamed Borquita. Delphine and her daughter returned to New Orleans afterwards. In 1808, Delphine married Jean Blanc, a prominent banker, merchant, lawyer, and legislator. And dude had a lot of jobs. Reminds me of that a sketch that they used to do on In Living Color way back when about the Jamaicans who had all the different jobs. At the time of the marriage, Blanc purchased a house at 409 Royal Street in New Orleans for the family, which became known later as the Villa Blanc. The Fiend had 4 more children by Blanc, named Marie-Louise Pauline, Louis-Marie Laure, Marie-Louise Jean, and Jean-Pierre Pauline Blanc. Blanc died in 1816. The Fiend married her 3rd husband. This chick is not holding back. Physician Leonard Louis Nicholas LaLaurie, who was much younger than she. On June 25th, 1825, in 1831, she bought property at 1140 Royal Street, which she managed in her own name with the little involvement of her husband. And by 1832, had built a 3-story mansion there, complete with attached slave quarters. She lived there with her husband and 2 of her daughters, and maintained a central position in the social circles of New Orleans. The LaLauries, in the style of their social class at the time, maintained several black slaves and slave quarters attached to the Royal Street mansion. Accounts of Delphine LaLaurie's treatments of her slaves between 1831 and 1834 are mixed, as most stories. And I think as most stories that we've told, there's been some different accounts here and there. Harriet Martineau, writing in 1838 and recounting tales told to her by New Orleans residents during her 1836 visit, claimed LaLaurie's slaves were observed to be singularly haggard and wretched. However, in public appearances, LaLaurie was seen to be generally polite to black people and solicitous of her slaves' health. And court records of the time show that LaLaurie emancipated 2 of her own slaves in 1832, in 1819 and 1832. Nevertheless, Martineau reported that public rumors about LaLaurie's mistreatment of her slaves was sufficiently widespread that a local lawyer was dispatched to Royal Street to remind LaLaurie of the laws relevant to the upkeep of slaves. During this visit, the lawyer found no evidence of wrongdoing or mistreatment of slaves by LaLaurie. I would say that when I first read this, I said, okay, maybe it's a little feather in her cap, but at the same time, we are talking about slaves. And how much, while there are rules and laws here, as I've read, how much are you really checking? So I think you can go either way on this, on what you hear and how much of this you believe. Martineau also recounted other tales of LaLaurie's cruelty that were current among New Orleans residents in about 1836. She claimed that subsequent to the visit of the local lawyer, one of LaLaurie's neighbors saw one of her slaves, a 12-year-old girl named Leah, fall to her death from the roof of a Royal Street mansion while trying to avoid punishment from a whip-wielding Delphine LaLaurie. Leah had been brushing Delphine's hair when she hit a snag, causing Delphine to grab a whip and chase her. The body was subsequently buried on the mansion grounds. Now, I was reading several different accounts of this. And one of the accounts I was reading is a little more graphic. I shouldn't say a little more graphic, but a little more detailed, with chasing her through the yard, chasing her into the house with this whip. The girl was so afraid, she ran all the way to the roof, excuse me, and supposedly that is where she fell and died. But the accounts do come together at the end where they talk about there being a well on the property, and that is where this young lady, this young slave Leah, was buried. According to Martineau, this incident led to an investigation of the LaLauries, in which they were found guilty of illegal cruelty and forced to forfeit 9 slaves. These 9 slaves were then brought back by the LaLauries through the intermediary of one of their relatives and returned to the Royal Street residence. So they had to forfeit 9 slaves, and they turned around and they were able to buy them back with the help of a relative. Similarly, Martineau reported stories that LaLaurie kept her cook chained to the kitchen stove and beat her daughters when they attempted to feed the slaves. So her cruelty had no limits. And her children, at least with them being, and I'm assuming they were young, were trying to feed them. And they had some type of empathy for these slaves. On April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out in the LaLaurie residence on Royal Street, starting in the kitchen. When the police and fire marshals got there, they found a 70-year-old woman, the cook, chained to the stove by her ankle. She later confessed to them that she had set the fire as a suicide attempt for fear of her punishment, being taken to the uppermost room, because she said, quote, anyone who had been taken there never came back, close quote. As reported in the New Orleans Bee of April 11th, 1834, bystanders responding to the fire attempted to enter the slave quarters to ensure that everyone had been evacuated. Upon being refused the keys by the LaLauries, the bystanders broke down the doors to the slave quarters and found 7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck, with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other, who claimed to have been imprisoned there for some months. So, again, I've never heard anything like this story before. I've never heard anything where this seems to be not only compassion from the children, but from the town folk to give us those keys so we can save those slaves. Or you're not treating these slaves as you're supposed to, so we're taking 9 of them from you. And I'm not saying that obviously this stuff didn't happen. It did. I'm reading it. I researched it. Here it is. But I was still blown away. And that's one of the things I like about doing this podcast, whether it be information like this or hearing about the story that takes place in episode number 2, which is still my favorite episode, or other things that I've learned. I like being blown away by things. And the fact that they wanted these keys to save these slaves, I was really shocked by. But they go in and they find them mutilated. One suspended by the neck, limbs stretched, torn, and just imprisoned. And that's the part that does not shock me. Not at all. Not in the least is that shocking me. So one of those who entered the premises was Judge Jean-Francois Canon, who subsequently deposed to having found in the LaLaurie mansion, among others, a negress wearing an iron collar, an old Negro woman who had received a very deep wound on her head, who was too weak to be able to walk. Canon claimed that when he questioned Madame LaLaurie's husband about the slaves, he was told in an insolent manner that some people had better stay at home rather than come to others' houses to dictate laws and meddle with other people's businesses. So, again, these people are going in to save the slaves, to save these people, to save these human beings who are in slavery. One of them happens to be a judge. Again, shocking to me. Maybe shocking to some of you. A version of this story circulating in 1836, recounted by Martineau, added that the slaves were emaciated, showed signs of being flayed with a whip, were bound in restrictive postures, and wore spiked iron collars which kept their heads in static positions. When the discovery of the tortured slaves became widely known, a mob of local citizens attacked the LaLaurie residence and demolished and destroyed everything upon which they could lay their hands. Am I the only one who's surprised by this? That these people would get this outraged about the treatment of... I'm glad, but am I the only one? A sheriff and his officers were required to disperse the crowd, and by the time the mob left, the Royal Street property had sustained major damage, with scarcely anything remaining but the walls. The tortured slaves were taken to a local jail where they were available for public viewing. The New Orleans Bee reported that by April 12th, up to 4,000 people had attended to view the tortured slaves to convince themselves of their sufferings. So obviously, with this woman and her family's status, I'm sure they were telling people who did not believe that this is true, who did not believe that people of this class would treat their servants, their slaves, this way. The Pittsville Sun, citing the New Orleans Advertiser and writing several weeks after the evacuation of LaLaurie's slave quarters, claimed that 2 of the slaves found in the LaLaurie mansion had died since their rescue, and added, we understand that in digging the yard, bodies have been disinterred and a condemned well in the grounds of the mansion. Having been uncovered, others, particularly that of a child, were found. Don't forget, we talked about Leah, the little girl who was chased all the way up to the roof of the house where she fell to her death. These claims were repeated by Martineau in her 1838 book, Retrospect of Western Travel, where she placed the number of unearthed bodies at 2, including a child. Both histories of LaLaurie's poor treatment of her slaves circulated in Louisiana during the 19th century and were reprinted in collections of stories by Henry Castellanos and George Washington Cable. Cable's account, not to be confused with his unrelated 1881 novel Madame Delphine, was based on contemporary stories in newspapers such as the New Orleans Bee and the Advertiser, and upon Martineau's 1838 account. Retrospect of Western Travel were mixed in some synthesis, dialogue, and supposition entirely of his own creation. After 1945, stories of the LaLaurie slaves became considerably more explicit. Jean de Levine, writing the ghost stories of Old New Orleans in 1946, alleged that LaLaurie had a sadistic appetite, seemed never appeased until she had inflicted on one or more of her black servants some hideous form of torture, and claimed that those who responded to the 1834 fire had found male slaves stark naked, chained to the wall, their eyes gouged out, their fingernails pulled off by the roots. Others had their joints skinned and festering, great holes in their buttocks where the flesh had been sliced away, their ears hanging by shreds, their lips sewn together, intestines were pulled out and knotted around their naked waist. There were holes in skulls where a rough stick had been inserted to stir the brains. De La Fine did not directly cite any sources of these claims, and they were not supported by primary sources. I would love to know where he got these stories from. Those are some fascinating stories. Fascinating, I tell you. The story was further popularized and embellishment in Journey into Darkness, Ghosts and Vampires of New Orleans, in 1998 by Kalila Katharina Smith, the operator of a New Orleans ghost tour business. Well, you know, she had some things, some weird shit she was going to say, including a victim who obviously had her arms amputated and her skin peeled off in a circular pattern, making her look like a human caterpillar. Oh, these are fascinating stories. Fascinating. LaLaurie's life after the 1834 fire is not well documented. Martineau wrote in 1838 that LaLaurie fled New Orleans during the mob violence that followed the fire, taking a coach to the waterfront and traveling by schooner from there to Mobile, Alabama, and then on to Paris. Certainly by the time Martineau personally visited the Royal Street Mansion in 1836, it was still unoccupied and badly damaged, with gaping windows and empty walls. The circumstances of Delphine LaLaurie's death are also unclear. George Washington Cable recounted in 1888 a then popular but unsubstantiated story that LaLaurie had died in France in the boar hunting act, and we touched on that earlier. Whatever the truth, in the late 1930s, Eugene Bax, who served as sexton to St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 until 1924, discovered an old cracked copper plate in the alley 4 of the cemetery. The inscription on the plate read, Madame LaLaurie, December 7, 1842. So, not a lot of information. Seems like she may have went and lived a life a little less in the spotlight than she did prior to that. That's the only way I can imagine a woman who enjoyed being out in front would die, and there would not be a lot of known reasons why. There would not be a place where you could say for sure this is where she is. But again, this is a story this is a character, I should say, that kind of captured me. I don't remember what year that was, but it was a year that Kathy Bates played her in American Horror Story. And I thought, wow, where the hell did they get the, where did they conjure up this? And did a little research of my own, talked to a few people, and that character obviously based on this woman here. They went to the far extreme, I think, of what some of these stories, some of the folklore said about Madame LaLaurie as well. Nonetheless, when you do have a woman, your cook, chained to a stove, and she sets a fire to keep from going upstairs to the place where no one comes back down from, there has to be some things, hideous, terrifying things happening to those slaves there. Are they to the point where people's arms are being amputated and they are being skinned in a circular pattern like a human caterpillar? I can't say. And no one else can say for sure, obviously. But there had to be some hideous things going on. And I just want to say one more time before I end it. Slavery is, I don't want to get into that conversation, but this is the first time that I've ever read anything that said black people, not black people, but white people would come over and try to pull the slaves out and save their lives and rescue them from being treated in the manner that this woman was treating hers. So learn something new every day, and that was something that I took from this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's episode of Murderess Podcast. All right, folks, I want you guys to remember, be aware of your surroundings, and we'll see you next week.